Once again, it's on. Y'all know what time it is. It's time to play some toss. Welcome, everyone, to episode 62 of Toss, the Tristain on Sports Show. It is your main man, T-Squared, Tristain Thomas. Let me be one of the first to wish you all a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, and a happy Kwanzaa. We are in the holiday season. All that jumps off this week. You know what else jumps off this week? Bucks basketball. Regular season starts. Got to talk about that. We also got to talk about a punishment handed down to the Milwaukee Bucks. How I feel about that, I think it's a bunch of bull, but we'll get to that. Badgers, they made a bowl game at 3-3. It's been a crazy year. We'll check in quickly with them. The Green Bay Packers handle business, but man, was it ugly. Why does it concern me? We'll talk about that. In the toss sweep, we have to talk NFL clinching scenarios, and I have to give you my NBA season predictions, playoff predictions. But you all know how we get things started here on Toss. We get things started with the state of the state, and let's go to those Milwaukee Bucks that we just mentioned. The Milwaukee Bucks begin their season Wednesday in Boston. The NBA season begins on Tuesday. As we record this program, NBA basketball is happening right now. It's great to see KD back on the court, a healthy Kyrie. They ran through the Warriors. Right now we have the Clippers and the Lakers, world champion Lakers. They got their rings, and they're getting a little bit mollywopped right now as we speak. It's great to have the NBA back, and even though if it's a little bit quick, you hope for good health for all those guys and all the personnel and everyone that it takes to put these games on. You just hope that they stay away from this virus and just stay healthy. But Bucks begin on Wednesday in Boston against the Celtics. Tough matchup off the bat. You got John Horst talking about some things on the court. He's talking about Dante DiVincenzo having earned the right to be a part of that starting five. We'll see how that goes. Said he's worked his tail off. We'll see how that goes. But the thing that's caught my eye, because there's nothing really to break down for the Milwaukee Bucks currently. There really isn't. Obviously, we know they have to play better defense. Obviously, we know they have to play a little bit more fluidly offensively. But these guys are still trying to get to know each other. They're still trying to get to learn each other's game. They're trying to recapture that defensive intensity that they had before they went into the bubble last season. A lot of new guys on the roster, a lot of new faces. They still have to get acclimated with each other. You're talking a couple weeks training camp and 3 preseason games. Guys are not going to be in sync with each other. And if they get off to a little bit of a slow start, I don't want to hear all these doom scrollers coming through with their predictions of doom and gloom for the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't want to hear it. It's going to be tough for everybody. Everybody's still trying to get acclimated to this craziness that is 2020. Because that's exactly what it is. It's absolute craziness. Short off season, short training camps, short preseason. It's going to take a while to get things well oiled and moving. I'll be more impressed if those guys jump out of the gate. It's like, wow, they an 0-3 preseason and they somehow, some way put it together and they're rolling now. I'll be more impressed if that happens. But I will not be surprised if they come out the gates and struggle a little bit. It's going to take a little bit. It's going to take a little bit to get this together, and people need to have patience. But in this on-demand world, we want success now. We want good play now, and that's just not always the case. That's not how sports work. Sometimes you need to get to learn each other and grow together. Then you become a well-oiled machine. Then you get moving. Then you start rolling through teams. Then they start looking like how you thought they would. But I digress. We'll see how they look on Wednesday against the Celtics. There was more stuff off the court, the thing that caught my eye. We know that the Bogdanovich trade pretty much collapsed because the rest of the NBA was hating on the Bucks. Pat Riley, other teams, they were making snide comments, and that got the eyes and ears of Adam Silver and the front office of the NBA. decided to slap a tampering investigation onto the Bucks' plate. Well, that investigation was concluded. I'm going to read to you verbatim the press release from the NBA Communications Office. This is verbatim on their tampering investigation. NBA imposes penalty on Milwaukee Bucks for early free agency discussions. The NBA announced today that the Milwaukee Bucks violated league rules governing the timing of the season's free agency discussions, and that the league has rescinded the Bucks' 2022 second-round draft pick. The league conducted an investigation into whether the Bucks had discussions with Bogdan Bogdanović and or his agents regarding a free agent contract prior to the date when such discussions were permitted. The investigation concluded that early discussions did in fact occur, constituting conduct detrimental to the NBA. The penalty took into account the Bucks' cooperation with the investigation, the absence of evidence of any impermissible early agreement on the terms of a contract between the Bucks and Bogdanović, and the fact that the team ultimately did not sign Bogdanović. I don't think y'all really realize how infuriated I was when the trade collapsed, the sign and trade collapsed to begin with. At that point, Bucks ownership, Bucks GM, John Horst, were trying to acquire players that not only would perform on the court, perform in the playoffs, fit into the mold of what the team wants to do offensively, but they were trying to keep their generational talent in Giannis Antetokounmpo on the Bucks. Antetokounmpo wanted Bogdanović on the Bucks. Bogdanović was a guy that the Bucks had, targeted before at trade deadlines, but never pulled the trigger. This is a guy your two-time MVP wanted, your generational talent wanted on the team, and he fits the mold for what you want to do. So they were trying to do whatever they possibly could to ensure that Giannis stayed. But it excited you because it was a player that fit the mold of what you wanted to do. High volume three-point shooter, double-digit points. Giannis going down the lane, brings the defense with him, kicks it out to a shooter that you know you could rely on. It's what the Bucks want to do. And it's a player that your MVP has stated, hey, yeah, I would love to play with this guy. I like this guy. So they tried to do whatever they could to go and get this guy. Now, I get it. Rules are rules. But you found no evidence, and you said this yourself, you found no evidence of any framework of a sign and trade, of any kind of an agreement, of any kind of framework. You just had evidence of discussions between the Bucks and Bogdanović and the Kings. And I believe it was like something like 5 days early. It is absolutely ridiculous to me that this team, this small market team that is trying to keep their generational talent on this team, in this city, in this state, this team gets penalized for something that big market teams like the Lakers, we all know that it was an open pursuit for Anthony Davis before that trade from the Pelicans to the Lakers happened. That was the worst kept open secret in the NBA. I've talked to many people and they said, dude, that's the biggest secret. That's the most open secret through every circle. Everybody knows it's going to happen. You think LeBron wasn't in his ear? You think Rob Pelinka wasn't in his ear? And Magic in his short time in the front office, you think he wasn't in Anthony Davis's ear? Didn't Magic get fined for talking about other players? He got fined, but yet they didn't get any picks snatched from them. They didn't have any moves squashed that would prevent them from keeping their generational talent. They continue to acquire generational talent. And all the Laker fans out there and some other people in other spots are going to sit there and talk about, oh, well, what about the CP3 voided trade? Yeah, that was pretty bogus, but look at it this way. And I've talked about it before. That was the NBA. The NBA made that decision. The NBA at the time owned the Hornets franchise because they were displaced. It was after the Hurricanes. They could not play in New Orleans. They got placed, I believe they got placed into Oklahoma City for a little bit until they were able to play in New Orleans again. But the NBA owned that team because that team did not have an owner. They were vetting potential ownership. The NBA owned that team. So they were not going to give up the one and only star that was on that team, and that was Chris Paul. That is the reason why the NBA voided that trade. They weren't going to give that up. They weren't going to give him up. They were just not going to give him up. Plain and simple. But you have all these other big market teams that are able to go out there and kind of, put their feelings out there. And something like this is just an open secret. You very nearly caused the Milwaukee Bucks to lose Giannis. And I don't know how close it was, but you have to think that was something that also weighed into his decision. Now, Giannis has come out and said all the right things. He said, hey, I never even thought about, leaving. I asked my mom and she would wanted to move. She said, no, I want to stay here. And he came out and said, hey, yeah, this is my home. And I have no doubts that his full intention was to stay. But what I also know is the fact that as a player, as a generational talent, as someone who sees himself as a big piece of a championship puzzle, an ultimate competitor, you want to be in a position to win championships. What can this franchise do to bring those kinds of players into the fold for you to win those championships? All that stuff weighed on his mind. So when you see Bogdanovich get slapped away by the NBA, essentially, and for them to essentially come out and say, oh, well, since you guys cooperated and, we don't have any evidence of any framework on an agreement, and because you ultimately did not, sign Bogdanovich, we'll cut you guys some slack. We'll cut you guys some slack. We won't take any money from you, but we're going to take your second round pick in 2022. It's really maddening to me because it's like, okay, now you pretty much squashed. And I said this before, even if they had gotten to the point where they drew up the paperwork for this sign and trade, the NBA would have came in and squashed and voided it because other teams were mad. Other teams were mad. That's plain and simple what it is. Other teams were mad that the Bucks put themselves in position to get a player, a piece of the puzzle that would allow them to re-sign Giannis, which ultimately he ended up re-signing anyway. The Drew Holiday move, for me, is more than likely what did it. And they upgraded a lot of parts of that roster. They got a lot of nice pieces onto that roster. But they knew when you have teams drawing up dossiers on Giannis and his brothers and his lady, come on. They knew full well what a Bogdanovich signing would have done. They knew full well that Giannis wanted to play with that dude. They knew full well what Bogdanovich could have brought to that roster. They knew full well that if the Bucks would have signed him, it was a 100% certainty he was going to re-sign with the Bucks. And they felt, if we can stop that from happening, we got an actual shot at Giannis next summer. We can do it. So I guess it's kind of a thing where, I'm pissed off about that. But I'm also laughing because y'all did all that dirt. And you pretty much sicked the NBA front office on the Bucks. You got them to get a second round pick from them. So you're kind of trying to damage what they're able to do with picks and draft capital and trying to make other moves to keep this championship window open. So you did a little bit of a small ding of damage in that regard. But you lost the war because Giannis is here for another 5 seasons. So I kind of laugh about it. Like, y'all did all that dirt. And for what? A second round draft pick. Yeah, it sucks. Bucks won't have Bogdanovich. Would have been a very nice piece. But John Horst rebounded, found other nice pieces to complement Giannis. It is a very good roster. Some are saying it's probably the best roster that he's had since he's become a superstar and a 2-time MVP. I will echo some of those sentiments. But you did all that to collapse the sign and trade and to get a second round pick taken away. That's essentially what you did because Giannis ended up signing. So all that dirt you did came back and backfired on you. But the part that makes you raise an eyebrow is the fact that the NBA came in and investigated this. When there are clear examples of bigger market teams having done this, and you don't hear about any kind of investigation on them. Adam Silver came out in an interview and he's talking about how the re-signing of Giannis in Milwaukee is a huge thing for the NBA and it's great for small markets. And he's touting these superstars being able to stay in small markets, but yet you have your front office investigate something about, like, I get it, rules are rules, but there are more egregious examples of guys, of teams in bigger markets doing this for longer periods of time, well before, not 5 days before like the Bucks, well before, months, maybe even a year. And they don't get investigated. You investigate the small market team, you make them pay. You damn near caused them to lose Giannis. It seems to me like, yeah, small market teams, the crowd will take to them. They might be able to make some money and all this and that. But then, I don't know. I think that superstar needs to go out to LA. I think that superstar needs to go to New York. I think that superstar needs to go down to Houston, Miami. Let's get them in one of these big markets. And that's better for the NBA. When the Lakers are good or when the Knicks are good, that's better for the NBA. Forget when the Bucks are good. Forget when the Timberwolves are good. Forget when Portland is good. Oh, when the LA and New York are good, it's great for the NBA. That's where these big superstars need to go. We need them to team up. We need attention in those big markets. That's what we need to do. It just seems like the NBA dislikes the superstars being in these quote unquote small markets. There's a reason why you hear people more and more say this, because the evidence is continuing to mount. You see it. It's not something I'm plucking out of thin air. Look at what you've done. But you have a guy in Giannis who said time and time again, he's got loyalty in his DNA. He's telling people, hey, don't worry about it. I'm not leaving Milwaukee. Hey, Milwaukee is my home. Milwaukee is my city. It's one of the most beautiful places I've been. Let's get it. So all that dirt that all those teams did to try to make Giannis leave, this investigation that the NBA slapped on the Bucks, essentially in that press release telling you that, hey, because you didn't sign Bogdanovich ultimately, that's the only reason why we're not being harsher on you with this punishment. All that dirt mounted to nothing because Giannis is staying in Milwaukee. But it's still something that makes me absolutely furious. Woosah. I'm going to try to, it's just nothing more than a distraction. I'm glad it's out of the way. It's absolute garbage. It's bull that they're getting a second round pick taken from them. And I know, with the Bucks being good, that second round pick may not amount to much. But you never know. Plus, it's draft capital that is now gone. As if you don't have enough of your own draft capital gone anyway from the transactions that you made. But there's always a deal to be made. Who knows? Maybe Horace can get some more of that draft capital back and they can make another move. I don't know. But I think that's absolute bull what they did. But anyway, we'll move on. Continuing on here on Toss, State of the State. Let's take a quick check-in with the Badgers. Now, the Badgers ended up going 3-3. Okay, they had a lot of games canceled, and because they had a lot of those games canceled, they missed, I believe, more than 3 Big Ten games due to COVID. Those games were canceled. They weren't able to play in the Big Ten championship game, and then the Big Ten ended up changing their own rule and saying, oh, well, you only need to play 5 Big Ten games, which instantly benefited Ohio State. They went ahead and won the Big Ten championship against Northwestern. Yeah, of course, let's just cater to Ohio State. But anyway, that's a different story for a different day. They ended up 3-3. They won their final game against Minnesota, a game that was previously canceled because of a COVID outbreak on the Minnesota side. Ends up getting rescheduled. Paul Bunyan's axe. The axe stays in Madison for yet another year. If the Badgers won that game in overtime, 20-17, made them bowl eligible. And they are now going up against Wake Forest, who's also 500. And Duke's Mayo Bowl on December 30th. Yes, that's right. Duke's Mayo Bowl. Now, look, I know I can't say I'm excited for the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I'm sorry. I can't say that it's going to be appointment television for me. I'm sorry. As much as I love the Badgers, I'm sorry. I can't sit here and say that I'm so excited and ready and amped up to go and get my snacks and get my adult beverages and sit down and watch the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I can't say that. I'd be lying to you if I were to sit here and say that. And we keep it truthful, opinionated, and passionate here on Toss. It is the very core beliefs of what we do. So I can't do that to you. I can't sit here and lie and say I'm excited about the Duke's Mayo Bowl. But am I glad that these guys get another game? Yes, as long as they're able to do it safely. They've already been through their own COVID outbreak. These guys are taking a risk. Do I hope they win the bowl game? Absolutely, I do. I hope they win every game. It's been a rough year. But, man, the Duke's Mayo Bowl, what is that trophy going to be? Insert your own joke. But they made a bowl game. Like I said, it's been a challenging year. You hope next year brings some sort of normalcy. I still think they should have left their original plan in place, starting up in spring and playing in the spring. I wish they would have done that. I think things would be a lot clearer around that point in time. But they didn't. And here we are. They're 3-3 and going to the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Exactly all the goals that these guys had at the beginning of the year. Hey, it's a bowl game, so go out there and get it. Moving on here on State of the State. Hey, we got to hit them up, so we got to let people know. Let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. Let's talk about that 24-16 victory over the Carolina Panthers this past Saturday. Yes, Saturday football. That means playoff time is coming. We start getting those double and triple headers on Saturdays. Playoff time is coming. And also, side note, to everyone, all my fantasy players who have made their fantasy football championships, congratulations. I also made my finals. Best record in the league. It's going to be a tough game for me. But congratulations if you made the finals and good luck there. But let's get back to the Green Bay Packers. It was a great first half. You're talking about a 21-3 lead. Offense getting out to a very fast start. Rodgers with 2 touchdown passes. One to Big Bob Tunyon. He had a running touchdown. It seemed as if this offense was going to be able to move up and down the field at will against this Carolina Panthers defense, this young, talented Carolina Panthers defense. Now, look, give Matt Rule a couple more years, some more picks, but they've got some really nice pieces on that defense in Carolina. They really do. That's going to be a scary good defense in a couple of years if they allow Matt Rule the time to really get some of his guys in there and to get them acclimated and get them going. They have some really good young pieces. Played a lot of rookies. But they were going up and down the field at will. Aaron Jones ran all over him. 20 carries, 145 yards, a touchdown of his own. I mean, it was beautiful to watch in the first half. But then the second half came. And the Packers aren't able to move that football. And Aaron Rodgers, who came into that game only having been sacked 14 times all season, got dropped 5 times. The Panthers tightened up their coverage, made life difficult for Devontae Adams, made life difficult for Allen Lazard, MVS, Equinemius St. Brown. They made life tough for all those guys. A team that came in second overall in third down conversions only goes 5 for 12. As I said before, Carolina's defense, their coverage tightened, which allowed Carolina to get a pass rush, pressure off the edges, up the gut. It was a night and day difference. It was an absolute night and day difference between the first half and the second half. The defense tightened those screws up, and it looked like Green Bay had never, ever played. It looked like they were fresh into preseason. Making mistakes, not able to move the football, not knowing these guys. You got a lot of guys on the roster that probably aren't going to be there. It looked like a preseason game offensively. But you have to give credit to Carolina's defense for making it look like that. When they clamped down on coverage, able to get that pressure up the middle and off the edges, made life tough for Rodgers, made him feel really uncomfortable in that pocket, dropped him 5 times. Receivers couldn't get any type of separation. Jones was able to run the ball a bit still. A.J. Dillon was still A.J. the Sauce Dillon. Can you love? I love saying that name. But he got a few carries. Jamal Williams got a few carries. They were able to run the football, and that's where you have to give the Packers defense credit. Had it not been for the big lead that the Packers were able to amass in the first half, because they got outscored 13-3 in the second half. 13-3. Had it not been for that 21-3 lead in that first half, you would have lost that game. So it was that big lead that they amassed, coupled with that defense of the Green Bay Packers, which came into the game 8th overall, believe it or not. This is a top 10 defense. The Green Bay Packers have a top 10 defense. For all the stories about the rushing defense, which it continues to be an Achilles heel, but they've done a much better job over the last few weeks. Raised that ranking, which has raised the overall ranking of the Green Bay Packers defense as well. You talk about they came into that game 8th overall, which was astounding. It's a top 10 defense, the number 2 offense in the NFL. Goes to show you why you're sitting there 11-3. Number 1 seed in NFC currently. But that defense stepped up. They were able to stop the run a little bit better than they had been. Started getting that pressure. Coverage was pretty good all night. That defense saved them, and that big lead that they got in the first half saved them. Now, I already wrote on the Toss blog at tossnationmedia.com that's not going to be good enough. You guys now have to get ready for the playoffs. You've already clinched your division. You are assured of a playoff spot, a home playoff game, whether you're 1 or 2 or even 3. And we'll talk about scenarios in the tall sweep. You have to start getting prepared for the playoffs. You have to think about, okay, how are we playing? What are we doing that's getting us into trouble? Because once we get to the playoffs, there's no, oh, well, you know what? We did that. We lost the game because of it, but we can always fix it and come back better next week. There is no next week. There is no next week. You got to start to get that fixed now. I said it was bad. I said that, yes, Carolina gave them what would be a playoff game scenario. You got out to a strong first half, and then adjustments were made, which is exactly what happens in the playoffs. If any other coach is worth their weight in gold, they're going to make adjustments, and they're going to make life hell for you in that second half so they can get their team back into it and possibly snatch that game from you. If you don't believe me in saying that wasn't bad and that wasn't good enough, how about a quote from Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers quarterback himself, when he said, quote, "Tonight was definitely a stinker for the offense. Just the third and fourth quarters. That type of football in the second half, not going to get it done in the playoffs." That was Aaron Rodgers' direct quote after the game in post-game press conference or the Zoom conference. I'm not the only one noticing it. The trigger man, the quarterback, the first ballot Hall of Famer, the 2-time MVP, probably going to be a 3-time MVP. The Super Bowl champion, the Super Bowl MVP, has come out and said that is not good enough. The offense stunk in the third and fourth quarters. And they did. They absolutely did. He said that they're not going to win in the playoffs if they play like that in the third and fourth quarters. And he's absolutely right. This will not cut it in the playoffs. I've said it. Rodgers has said it. So what are you going to do about it? How are you going to go and make sure that you're able to overcome whatever adjustments are being made against you? How are you going to make these weaknesses strengths so you can run through that tournament and go get Vince's trophy? Make no mistake about it. You have another opportunity Sunday night, your final home game of the regular season against the Tennessee Titans, who lead their own division, the AFC South. They've won 10 games. They tout the NFL's leading rusher in Derrick Henry. Y'all, I am not going to lie to you. I am nervous about this game. I am nervous about what Derrick Henry is going to do to this run defense. Because from what I've seen, anytime I've watched the games, every time I've watched them back and just looked at clips and just try to piece together why does this run defense just seem not to get it? They have to be disciplined. They have to be disciplined. Gap integrity. Sure tackling. Watching for cutback lanes. Gang tackling. All of that has to be a part of what they do to improve this running defense, and especially against a mutant running back in Derrick Henry. I mean, you talk about a specimen. The guy is special. But he has the potential to go for 200-plus yards and multiple scores against the Green Bay Packers, given the history of what they've been doing on running defense this season. Hell, even last season, even the season before that. They have to start getting their best efforts in now. They have to start learning and growing and fixing what their weaknesses are now. Because you're not going to have time to do that in the playoffs. You got to come in, you got to win, you got to survive. And it'd be much easier to survive if you start fixing those weaknesses now. You got a big test on Sunday night. Tennessee. Prime time. The only game in town. All eyes are going to be on you. Packers need to get the job done. You won the NFC North. You're still sitting in the number 1 seed spot. The only first round bye. It's all there for you. It is all there for you. Are you going to go and take it? And that's the state of the state. The Bucks got penalized for a conversation that they had 5 days before they were able to, when you got other teams who have done it months and years before they were able to get their 2022 second round pick snatched from them, all because other teams were mad and they were trying to give themselves a shot at Giannis. But guess what? It failed. Giannis resigned. The Badgers, Duke Mayo's Bowl, or Duke's Mayo Bowl, I still can't believe that, against Wake Forest, December 30th. Hey, watch it if you want. And the Packers defeat the Panthers 24-16. Pretty in the first half, but it was ugly in the second half. They have got to get better. It's time for us to run the toss sweep. The Toss Sweep, brought to you by the good folks at Toss Nation Media. Toss Nation Media, truthful, opinionated, passionate sports. It's what you deserve. We mentioned some NFL clinching scenarios for Week 16. Can't believe we're in Week 16 already. And there's a few of them. There's some kind of interesting scenarios here that we have to go through. I say let's start over in the AFC first. So who's clinched the playoff spot already in the NFC? Or excuse me, the AFC? We've got Buffalo. They clinched the East for the first time since 1995. The long reign of the Patriots is over there. Patriots also clinching a losing record. Or did they clinch? Did they clinch a losing record already? I don't know. I just know that they won't be over 500, and they're not making the playoffs. Kansas City already clinched the AFC West Division Championship. The Pittsburgh Steelers have clinched a playoff berth, but they have not yet clinched the AFC North Division title. Why? Because they are on a 3-game losing streak after losing Monday night against the Bengals. That's what Juju gets for doing TikToks and dancing in the middle of the field on their logo. They went and did exactly what they were supposed to. I'm talking about the Bengals and took it out on them on the field. All legal hits, but they were hard. The Browns are 10-4. They had a tough Monday night loss, but they came and rebounded and won. Cleveland clinches the playoff berth with their first scenario: a Cleveland win and a Baltimore loss or tie. 2, a Cleveland win or a Miami loss or tie. 3, a Cleveland win or an Indianapolis loss. 4, Cleveland tie or a Baltimore loss. And their 5th scenario is a Cleveland tie and a Miami loss. Then the Cleveland Browns will have clinched a playoff berth. Still can't believe they're 10-4. They've really put things together. Kevin Stefanski, he should definitely be in Coach of the Year consideration. The Colts, also 10-4. They can clinch a playoff berth if they win and Baltimore loses or ties. If they win or Miami loses or ties. If Indianapolis ties or Baltimore loses, or if Indianapolis ties and Miami loses, Indianapolis clinches a playoff berth. The Kansas City Chiefs will clinch a first-round bye and the number 1 seed in the AFC if they win. So that's all they need to do is just win. If Pittsburgh loses, if Buffalo loses or ties, and also if Pittsburgh loses or ties, and Kansas City clinches strength of schedule tiebreaker over Pittsburgh or Buffalo and clinches at least a tie and strength of victory tiebreaker over the other club. So really, just to break all that down, all Kansas City has to do is win. If they don't win and they're up against Atlanta, who's 4-10, if they don't win, then all they need is either a Pittsburgh loss or a tie or a Buffalo loss or a tie. That's essentially what that means. Pittsburgh, they clinched the AFC North this Sunday. If they win, or if Cleveland loses, or if they tie and Cleveland ties, then they clinch the AFC North. So that thing gets squoze in a little bit, and Mike Tomlin is not happy about being on a 3-game losing streak, so I expect him to come out with absolute fire in their game on Sunday against the Colts. So they got a tough one themselves. The Titans, again, Green Bay's opponent this Sunday night, they clinched the AFC South. Now, remember, they're in competition with the Colts. They clinched the AFC South with a win and a Colts loss. Now, they can also clinch a playoff berth this Sunday if they win against the Packers, or if Miami loses, Baltimore loses, or Tennessee ties and Baltimore ties. So if they win, they clinch a playoff berth. They need the Colts to lose in order to clinch their division. But if they lose and Miami loses, then they clinch a playoff berth. If Baltimore loses, they clinch a playoff berth. Or if Baltimore ties and Tennessee ties, they clinch a playoff berth. In the NFC, things are pretty well clinched up top, much like the AFC. The Green Bay Packers have already clinched their division. They are the only team in the NFC to have done so. As I said before, they're sitting in the number 1 spot right now, the only bye in the NFC. New Orleans Saints have clinched a playoff berth, as well as the Seattle Seahawks with their win last Sunday. They clinched a playoff berth. Now, this week's clinching scenarios: Arizona, who's 8-6, they've got some teams on their backs right now. They will clinch a playoff berth with a win and a Chicago loss or tie. If Arizona ties or Chicago loses, Arizona clinches a playoff berth. The Packers do have something that they could clinch. They could clinch a first-round bye by winning their game against Tennessee and having Seattle lose or tie their game. Also, if Green Bay ties and New Orleans loses or ties and Seattle loses or ties, then they'll clinch the first-round bye. The Los Angeles Rams, currently 9-5, they will clinch a playoff berth if they win. That's all they need to do. They need to win. If they don't win, they have to hope for a Chicago loss or tie, and they have to hope for an Arizona win or tie. So a team in their own division, they have to hope for. The New Orleans Saints can clinch the NFC South Division Championship if they win. Win, and they got it done. If they don't win, they have to hope for a Tampa Bay loss, or they have to hope that they tie or Tampa Bay ties. So basically, New Orleans, all they have to do is just win. The Seattle Seahawks, they'll clinch the NFC West Division Championship with a win. They're 10-4. All they have to do is win. They're right on the heels of the Green Bay Packers. So you got to hope for the Packers to continue winning there, but they're right on their heels as are the Saints. But you feel better about the Saints because you hold that tiebreaker against them in that head-to-head matchup, winning that Week 3 ball game against them. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they will clinch a playoff berth with a win or tie, and if Chicago loses or ties, they'll clinch a playoff berth. The Washington Football Team, WFT, they will clinch the NFC East Division Championship. All they have to do is win and get a New York Giants loss or tie, or Washington has the tie and hope for a New York Giants loss and a Philadelphia-Dallas tie. So they have some scenarios there. They have to win, but they also have to have the Giants lose because the Giants are right on their tails. That division is still wide open for the NFC least. I should have said that first. I'm not calling them the East. They are the least. Your division leaders 6-8. You got teams that only have 4 wins that are still in this thing. That is just absolutely crazy to me. But those are your Week 16 clinching scenarios. Like I said, we're getting down to the nitty gritty. It's almost playoff time. You just feel that little bit of excitement in your gut, man. You just feel it. It just playoff. This time of the year just does something to me when it comes to NFL playoffs, man. You just feel it in your bones that it's coming, and you're excited over it. Let's move on and tall sweep to the NBA. Like I said, the NBA got started as we record this program tonight. The Bucks get started Wednesday night. Who do I have making the playoffs? What are my predictions this year? Let's start off in the East. And obviously I got the Bucks penciled in. And these are in no particular order, by the way. So I don't want anybody to hit me up on tossnationmedia.com or at the 200double on Twitter or Instagram and telling me that, how you got the Bucks at the number 7 seed? No, these are in no particular order. Your team, if I name it off as the A team and that name off, it doesn't mean that they're going to make the 8th seed. I'm just saying this is who I have making the playoffs. So the Bucks I got up top. I think they'll get the number 1 seed. That's probably the only one that I have in order. They'll get the top seed. The Celtics, I believe they will make the playoffs. The Raptors will still there. They will still be there. Nick Nurse is still there. Kyle Lowry is still there. Yes, they lost Serge Ibaka. Yes, they lost Gasol. I understand that, but I still think Nick Nurse is still a really good coach. They still have Pascal Siakam. They have Fred VanVleet. He re-signed. They still got some good pieces up there. They'll still be a factor in the East. The 76ers, Doc Rivers being head coach, I think he'll find a way to get the best out of those guys. Embiid, Simmons, all those guys, he'll find a way to get the best out of them. I think the Nets will make the playoffs. KD stays healthy. Kyrie stays healthy. Steve Nash finds his groove as a head coach, and they won big tonight over the Warriors. Warriors just could not buy a shot. They'll make the playoffs. The Pacers, I think, will still be there. They have a brand new coach, but I think they'll be in there. They may be in that play-in line, and again, there's a play-in tournament again this season. So a lot of those teams that are 7 through 10, they have a chance to get themselves into there. So they might be hanging around that spot. The Heat will definitely make it. They will definitely make it. You talk about the Eastern Conference representative in the finals last season, defending Eastern Conference champions. They'll be in the playoffs for sure. For sure they will be. And the Wizards, Russell Westbrook being brought into the fold, I think those guys will find a way into playoffs. And again, you have that play-in tournament. So those teams that are 7 through 10 at the time of that play-in tourney, anything can happen. A team could just get hot, play its best basketball of the season, and make it into the playoffs. So you just never know. You never know. The Hawks could be in that range. I don't have the Hawks making the playoffs outright. I think they're, if we're talking about outright without a play-in tournament, I don't think they make it. I think they're on the cusp, but they just miss it. But because of this play-in tournament, they have a shot at it. They have a shot at it. They get those young guys all together and play some consistent basketball. And they have a shot. I just worry about them defensively. I know they got Capella and Collins. I understand that, but I just worry about them defensively. I don't think they have enough defense to do much. They'll be all offensive, trust me. But they'll be on that cusp. That play-in tournament is going to be, I think it's going to be bananas because, like I said, if a team gets on a run, and much like the Blazers did, they played themselves right into the playoffs last season with that play-in tourney. Anything can happen. Let's move on to the Western Conference, and obviously I have the defending champion Lakers in there. The Nuggets are a very solid team. They're very good. They'll be there. The Clippers will be there. Yes, I know all the stories about Kawhi and Paul George are coming out, and now you also have a new coach with Ty Lue, so it's really you kind of have consistency there. It's just that now he moves, he just moves a little bit further up the bench, but I think they'll be there. The Mavs will be there. I think they'll do that again. You just hope that Kristaps Porzingis is able to stay healthy. The Jazz will be there. I think the Jazz will definitely be there. You know, it's solid defensively. Rudy Gobert signing the Supermax for over $200 million. Whew. I know. I just know that Donovan Mitchell, who signed his own extension, worth well over $100 million, is looking at that and like, okay, next contract, I'm getting paid. Not that he didn't get paid this time around, but he's like, after this rookie extension, I am getting paid. So the Jazz will be there. I think the Suns will be there. Yes, CP3, but you look at the way that they played to close out that season. You talk about the hottest of hot teams. They went 8-0 in the bubble. You add a player like CP3, who's only going to do good for that team, for that young team. I think they might sneak in. And again, I have them outright in. I think they make it. I think they're lower toward the bottom of the conference. They'll definitely be in that play-in tourney. Like I said, that's 7 through 10. They'll be in there, but straight away I have them in. The Blazers is another team I have straight away in. You hope for health for that team. Guys like Nurkic, you got to hope those guys stay healthy. And the Warriors. Now I know they had a bad showing tonight against the Nets. I know they're without Klay Thompson. But James Wiseman came in. He scored 19 points. Great rookie debut. Steph Curry is still a multi-time MVP, a multi-time champion. Steve Kerr, multi-time championship winning head coach. They'll figure it out. They'll get it together, and they'll play much better. But again, they too might be towards the lower end of that conference in that 7 to 10 range for that play-in tournament. Just there may be some teams on that cusp that will actually make it. Like I said, any team gets hot, and they can make it. They can absolutely make it. So to recap, Eastern Conference, straight away, Bucks, Celtics, 76ers, Nets, Pacers, Heat, and Wizards will all make the playoffs. And in the Western Conference, the Lakers, Nuggets, Clippers, Mavs, Jazz, Suns, Blazers, and Warriors will make the playoffs again. That play-in tourney will probably make some of that change. Injuries may make some of that change, but it'll be interesting to see how these lists of mine shape up when it's all said and done. But I'm just excited to have the NBA back. I hope everyone involved stays safe, and we have a great basketball season. That's basically what I'm hoping for. But as I said before, it's the holiday season, and I'm hoping everybody has a great holiday season, no matter what you celebrate. Whether it be Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah. Whether it's Christmas, Merry Christmas. Whether it's Kwanzaa, Happy Kwanzaa. But enjoy it. It's been a hell of a year. It's been rough. It's been tough. But if you're listening to this, it means that you're still standing and you still have a shot. Be kind to each other. Love each other. Have a safe holiday season. And just know that T-Squared loves you all. So that'll do it for me. That was episode 62 of the Tristain on Sports Show Toss. Y'all know where to find me on social media at the20double on Instagram and Twitter. It's Toss on Facebook. It sure is. Facebook.com/T on Sports Show. That's TON Sports Show. And you know where the home of the Toss brand of sports is. TossNationMedia.com. Your home for the Toss brand of sports, as I just said. Truthful, opinionated, passionate, sports. It's what you deserve. But as I said before, it's time for me to get on up out of here. This is T-Squared Tristan Thomas reminding all of you to keep it moving forward. Always forward. Forward always. Until next week. So long from Toss.